Right, for those of you who've watched my channel up to now will know that I can't leave the RS alone for too long, and my next modification is going to be to make a slightly longer box section swinging arm. It's quite a short wheelbase, the bike, so I'm thinking a longer swinging arm will just make it a little bit more stable because it is quite twitchy. And so I've looked around to see what other models use a box section swinging arm that could be suitable to be fitted to the RS. I just think the standard tubular swinging arm just looks a little bit spindly, and so I thought, well, I'll go for something to make it look a little bit beefier and hopefully improve the handling. So I've come up with an idea, so I'll show you what that is. Right, the plan is to use this one here, which is a CBX250 swinging arm. As you can see, it's box section and it uses the same chain tensioning end as the standard RS swinging arm. I've got a spare RS250 swinging arm, so I can use the necessary pivot points of this one to make a jig, which I can then fit the CBX swinging arm to then start doing the modification. The CBX swinging arm is too narrow, so I've cut it in half. I made up a spacer, a tube spacer there, to give me the same distance apart as the standard RS swinging arm. The only thing is, even widened like that, it's still too narrow here for the 150 tyre. So this left hand fork here is going to need to be slightly modified to give me a bit of clearance. And obviously where they attach to the frame is different, so I'm going to have to recreate this type of fixture, this type of fitting. I'll have to recreate that on the CBX 251. This one had was a single tube. The other one is two separate tubes with a gap. So I'm going to have to recreate that end. This one. I have to recreate this end onto this. But first I've got to make the jig to hold the standard one, and that will give me my my mounting points. That will give me a basis to go from, and then it's a question of cutting and welding. This one, it's a bit rough. It needs it'll need repair anyway. There's some rust holes in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this section out here, cut the strengthener out, do any repairs to the inside of the box section, and then I'm going to refabricate a new strengthener. And then these ends are going to need to be altered, shortened, rebushed, things like that. So it's going to take a little time, but I think it's going to be worth it in the end. And also I think I'd like to spray it silver when it's all done. Chain guard, similar area, similar fittings, but they're a bit further spaced apart, so I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. But the CBX 250 rear swinging arm already has the lug to take the bracket for the disc, for the rear disc. Although they didn't use a rear disc, they used a drum, but it was held captive with this lug, which just happens to be in exactly the right place I need for the caliper bracket. So that's the plan. So start with making the jig. Right, here's the jig that I've made to make the longer cross-section swinging arm. The lugs up here are the same distance apart as a standard RS, and I've used the tube that was originally welded to the CBX250 swinging arm. I've cut them, turned them down so they're the right distance apart, and then the pickup point for the back end of the swinging arm is here. It's longer, making the whole swinging arm longer. So basically it attaches there and here, so that's where I'll weld it to them on the other end like that. Once it's all tight and everything and I've got the right distance apart, then I can start. I can at least weld the tubes to there. And then I've got to make the strengthener that goes across here shaped. But there's a bit of repair work that needs to be done to this. So that's where I am so far. So it's just a question of getting these in the right position. Once it's all tight, once it's tightened up, I've had to change the angle of this one because it was too far over one side. So I've had to cut it here, open it up to reduce the angle, and then I'll re-weld that, maybe a strengthening plate on the inside as well. So that's where we are so far. Right, here's the swinging arm bolted into the jig. I've done the necessary repairs which it needed, and I've welded on the ends with the bushes in place, so it's now held in rigidly. It's about 50 mil longer than the standard RS swinging arm, so it should just lengthen the wheelbase a little bit and make it a little bit more stable at speed. So my next step is to make the cross brace here, the strengthener that goes across. It'll be curved to match the contour of the tyre, and then straight across here. It'll be similar to the standard RS strengthener, but it's going to be a fully welded construction on this one. So what I'm going to do is use a bit of card to make a template, and then cut some 1.5mm steel, and then make the cross brace. So that's my next step. Right, so that's the template in position. So you get a rough idea of what it's going to look like. So I'm just going to wait for my bit of sheet steel to turn up, and I can then replicate that in steel. Because there'll be another one underneath, and then I'm going to curve a piece of steel and then weld it inside, and then another flat piece at the front, all fully welded. And that should give it the strength. I think they call it the torsional rigidity. So yeah, so the next step is to replicate that in my 1.5mm steel sheet. Right, I've probably jumped ahead a little bit here, but last time you saw the template, the paper template. Well, I've made the right one in steel now, and I've just tacked it in place, and then there's another one underneath which is just tacked. I've made the front plate here, and that again, that's all tack welded. So now I've got to make the curved section, which I'm just about to do, and then again I'll spot weld. I'll tack it around, make sure everything is okay, make sure it's not twisted or anything like that. Keep it bolted in nice and firmly, and then fully weld. I'd have to do to make sure the distortion is kept to a minimum. I'll have to, I'll do, say, down one side here, one side there, then flip it up and do the other side. Do it in sections rather than start one end and then work your way along. That's a surefire way to get a bit of distortion. So yeah. So now I've got to just cut a thin piece of steel, shape it, curve it round like that, and then tack it in, and then set about the fully weld. Right, here's my curved piece of steel. Got the radius just about right. And that will fit in there like that. And then I'll well tack that in place and then fully weld it. Right, well that's the top part welded. I did these two sides first, then across here, and then I did this in sections. It's a bit, I've done down here, it's a little bit untidy. I'll probably have to do a little bit of cleaning up with the sander, but I don't want to remove too much. Just basically smooth it off, keep the strength there. So the next step is to unbolt it, flip it up the other way, and do the underside. But because this part's going to be sealed, you have to remember to drill a small hole to let the to allow it to for the expansion because of the heat, and also it gives me somewhere to then spray inside with a nozzle with either some sort of hammerite or wax oil or something like that to make sure it doesn't rust through from the inside out, because these have got like holes in them as well, so I'll do the same with them so that it doesn't rust from the inside. So that'll do for the moment, for tonight. Tomorrow I'll flip it over and do the other side, and then it's basically a clean-up job. Then I've got to move on to the mounting points for the rear shocks. These two here, they're further back on the CB500RS swinging arm, and if I leave them there, then the back end of the bike, because they're further back by 50mm, the back end of the bike will sit lower. So I've got to bring these forward by 50mm. So it's going to take a bit of working out, but I'm going to weld to this web here, weld some more, that's 8mm thick, weld some 8mm thick plate to there with the same shape as that, and then drill it, and then transfer these posts to this one, and then fill the hole that they've left. But that's we'll do that. Get this done first. Get it all cleaned up. Flip it over and everything, and then move on to this bit here. So I've got some 8mm thick plate to go there. I might even extend, just to give it some extra strength. These webs here, they kind of stopped quite abruptly there, so I might just cut a section of this and add it to there, weld it all in, so that it blends in a bit more, and it will also give it a little bit more strength as well. But yeah, that's the next step after I finish this. So it's quite hot at the moment, so we'll leave that for tonight. Here's the swinging arm finished. So I've given it a bit of a clean up, just to get the surface rust off. So the next step is to try it on the bike, basically. The bushes and the steel, the nylon bushes and the steel bushes, they're second hand. They're warm. I've just got them in there just so that I can try it out. But I'll be using new ones. Yeah, they were in there just so that I could bolt it into the jig. So I've decided not to move these. I was going to bring them forward 50mm, but I figured that it's quite a big job, quite a lot of working out to get them both equal, 50mm forward and the same height as well. So for in the meantime, the trouble is leaving them there because they're 50mm further back. The back end of the bike, because the shock is obviously going to be further away and slightly more of an angle, so the back of the bike will sit lower. So I've got some longer shocks, and so I'm going to fit them just to see what it's like. I could still fit the Hagen ones I've got, and if it does lower the back end slightly, I can always just bring the forks up through the yokes a bit to bring the front end down. The whole bike sits higher than a standard RS250 anyway, so I'd probably just be taking it back down to the seat height of when it was, you know, just a standard RS. So I'm probably fussing over nothing here, but for the time being, I just figured the way these are welded in, it's probably a bit too much of a hassle really to go for that. So I'll leave them where they are. I'll fit the longer shocks. I'll see what the ride height is like. I'll try both sets of shocks actually, the Hagens, and I've got some fairly cheap pattern ones, longer ones. I'll try them anyway and just see how we get on. So the next step is to try it for size on the bike. Here's the first attempt at fitting the swinging arm to the frame. I've just put the shocks on, just basically just got them on loosely, just to get an idea of the ride height, to see whether it actually makes a huge amount of difference at the back end here. It doesn't look at the moment like there's too much of a difference, having the shocks at the further back mounting point. So first impressions, it's not bad. You know, there's a few adjustments I need to do. I've spotted a bit of repair that's needed to where the footrest mounts onto the frame, but so far it's encouraging. But of course it's all got to come back off again for me to paint it and things like that. But like I said, there's a few I've got to modify the rear caliper bracket. That needs a slight bit of modification, but it's one of those things you expect to do when you do a project like this. There's always going to be some extra little jobs, and until I've got the footrests bolted on properly, I'm not going to know whether the brake master cylinder actuator rod is going to clear the swinging arm on the other side. But so far so good. Here's the finished article. I've sprayed it silver to give it that kind of aluminium look. Not sure if it's the right sort of silver, but I suppose I'll see once it's on the bike. So the bushes are in place, new grease nipples at the end. So all there is to do now is to clean up the kind of the chain guide, the protector that goes on the end here. So I'll give that a clean up, and then that's got to be screwed on. So I'll have to drill a couple of holes, top and bottom here, and on the underside. And then it's a case of get it fitted, and then we'll need to check to make sure the other things all fit, like the footrest brackets and stuff like that, and make sure that the brake master cylinder doesn't touch the swinging arm on the other side. If it does, that's okay. I'll have to think about how to modify that. But so far I'm fairly happy with it. I think it looks okay for a first attempt. I didn't think it was too bad. So I'll see how I get on from now. Nearly finished. I've got some longer shocks to bring the ride height back to the original height. Still got to fit the chain, and on the other side, I've nearly finished. The brake master cylinder did need a little bit of adjustment because it was closer to the swinging arm, because I think the box section one is slightly wider. But I'll do another video of that. Yeah, nearly there. Just got to bleed the brake and fit the chain, and then take it out for a road test. So if the weather's a bit better soon, I'll be able to take it out. But it looks quite good. I think the rear shocks look quite smart. And it's got the proper CBX250 chain guard as well. So nearly there. Well, that's it, finished. I think it looks pretty good. I'm quite pleased with the way it's turned out. I think if you compare it with the original one, you can see how much longer it is. But I think it just makes it look a little bit more substantial. It's just got a more beefy look about the box section swinging arm. Looks good with those shocks. So just got to wait now for some dry weather and take it out for a spin. But I think with the proper CBX 250 chain guard, I think that makes it look the part. So thanks for watching.